Welcome to the Dr. G. Aspie Show. I am Dr. Frank Askill, and my passion is Aspergers. I love the spectrum, and while I don't want to ignore the difficulties, I do want to celebrate the strengths of the super-connected mind. So why do I do this show? Overall, it is my hope that this show and my practice can educate and provide a few tips to families and Aspies alike, and that we can have some fun along the way. On the personal side, both my dad and my grandpapa were on the spectrum, and they had awesome minds. My dad was amazing, and I want to share their legacy as well. I do have families coming to my office all the time, every week, asking for me to go in and do trainings for teachers or pediatricians, school systems, even churches and family members. And they're asking me to teach how can they be more supportive and how can systems support our youngling Aspies. I am kind of frustrated, which is sort of what this show has to do with, that more pediatricians and more teachers and more school systems do not understand what it means to be on the spectrum, and they tend to stereotype it. So I want to provide some more information to you today. These guys are the best kind of different, which is a phrase coined by Shonda Schilling in her book by the same name. Highly recommend that book. There are two things I'd like to share with you today. Number one, Asperger's is awesome. I'm going to keep saying it. And number two, it doesn't always feel awesome to be an Aspie, and we're going to talk a little bit about why that is. First, Asperger's is awesome. We would be lost without people who are on the spectrum. Confirmed, we do know Dan Aykroyd, Dr. Temple Grandin, Daryl Hannah, and Craig Nichols of the Vines. Great music, by the way. You ought to check it out on iTunes. These are all Aspies we're sure of. But I suspect that in the past, in history, and also currently, there are other famous Aspies, and we'd be lost without them. They can include Charles Darwin, Beethoven, Mozart, Sir Isaac Newton, I think Andy Warhol. Many of these minds, including currently, possibly Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates. There's a great book on this topic entitled Aspergers and Self-Esteem, Insight and Hope Through Famous Role Models by Norm Legends. Great book, interesting stories, people I never even heard of. They're just amazing people. Without our super Aspies, we would not have, I don't think, rockets, computers, the Declaration of Independence, or even the University of Virginia, founded by Thomas Jefferson. Never combed his hair, walked around with a bird on his shoulder all the time, but he was an awesome president. As some of you may not know, Asperger's is a different kind of brain. And while all Aspies are different, if you met one Aspie, you've met one Aspie, there are some traits that are similar. Number one, high average to even higher average, superior intelligence. Two, a particular special interest or obsession. And three, difficulty processing social information. 80% of the information that we get in the world is nonverbal. If you're missing 80% of the communication or even half the communication, you're going to struggle. The DSM-4 has very specific criteria, but I like to use a more practical guide, and I call them kind of the Dr. G's criteria. First, Aspies do tend to be interpersonally unusual. They may have awkward eye contact, either too much or too little. They can be blunt in their statements and conversations. They can be black and white in their thinking and very justice-oriented. Second, most Aspies tend to be overly focused on one subject. I call this freight train brain. You know, you're moving down the tracks and it's hard to shift from one track to another. I know one such young man who has been through my life, and his special interest was fish. He knew everything about fish. Fishing, going to the lake, reading books about fish. He knew everything. He tied fishing lures and decorated the walls in his room with fish. And what's his favorite movie? Jaws. It's fantastic. Some Aspies can also have odd speech patterns. Their prosody can be a little bit unusual. So if I were to say the word Mississippi, it might come across as Mississippi. There's sort of a hiccup in the way that words can be used. And I've also had some unusual accents. I have one client who has a slightly British accent, even though his family is from the deep south. One of the most difficult aspects of the Aspie mind is misreading social cues, knowing what to say, when to say it, understanding another person's thoughts and feelings just by observing them. This is called other-mindedness, and it can be a real difficult feature of being an Aspie. Some kids will even kind of go up and hug somebody they don't know, or make comments that are inappropriate, but they don't understand why. They're not trying to be bad, or they're not trying to be overly friendly. They just don't understand it. And finally, Aspies do tend to be clumsy, but not all Aspies. Remember, if you've met one Aspie, you've met one Aspie. Clay Marzo, arguably the #1 surfer in the world, is Asperger's, and I don't think anybody would call him clumsy. All of these pieces of Asperger's can lead to a child who feels alone or isolated, can be very much ignored or bullied in middle school. And this is another important part of what I want to do with this show, is educating other kids, other family members. How do we accept this better kind of different? This bullying is really important, and if you tune in next week, you'll also see a show on bullying where a young man steps forward and talks about his experiences with bullying. I sum sort of the continuum up for families by something I call the Lemon Continuum. On the Lemon Continuum, you have a glass of water with lemon on the side, lemon-flavored water, lemonade, a lemon, and a lemon farm. And you can line people up all along this continuum, from Thomas Jefferson all the way over here to potentially George Lucas over here. It may be a glass of water with some lemon in it. Don't know him, would like to know him, big Star Wars fan. The second point of the day is that there is a downside. While I'm very upbeat and positive about all my Aspie heroes, there is a downside. Social difficulties, misunderstanding these social cues, feeling alone, feeling frustrated, they're all significant issues that I do not want to ignore. The media has unfortunately exploited our Aspies. There have been shows like The Big Bang Theory, which is very funny, but it is kind of exploiting Sheldon as an Aspie. And also in the movie The Hangover, the guy with the beard, he's Aspie as well, as far as I can tell. Media has also celebrated Asperger's to some extent, including Lisbeth Salander from The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, as well as Dr. Temperance Bones Brennan from the TV show Bones. My goal through my practice and this show is to share with the world the fact that Asperger's is actually a more highly evolved brain, and that with a step forward in certain obsessive interests and being able to do things that people haven't been able to do before, there's a cost, and this is a social cost. If the math brain is going to explode up and superconnect patterns that people have not noticed before, like Michael Burry, who predicted the mortgage collapse, you can read more about him online, then the social or other sections of the brain that have to do with relationships, it will cost. So you blow up one part of the brain, it'll cost you somewhere else. If Einstein is going to connect energy and mass, then probably the ability to tie his shoes is going to disappear, which was the case for him. I don't know if his parents were frustrated that he couldn't tie his shoes, but we have Velcro now, which was invented by NASA. NASA has done incredible things through the years, things that people never even dreamed possible. The space shuttle, going to the moon, the Hubble telescope, the Mars Pathfinder. And truth be told, I'll bet a lot of the NASA engineers, programmers, and support staff are awesome Aspies too. So realize that even though your Aspie has struggles, and they may feel like they're from outer space, they can contribute in absolutely incredible ways with their abilities. And that's why Asperger's is awesome. Remember, please stop by each week for new episodes, and feel free to contact me directly on Twitter at Dr. F. Gaskill, that's Gaskill, and check out our other shows through our main website, southeastpsych.com. And remember, thanks again for tuning in. I'm Dr. G. This is Dr. G Aspie Show, where Asperger's is awesome.